Rachel, and I'm a student from Messiah. Guess where I was today? I was at the beach. Have you guys ever gone to the beach? When I was a kid, I loved the beach because I loved building sandcastles and swimming in the ocean. However, I was always afraid of sharks. And guess what? I saw sharks at the beach today. But that's okay, they weren't in the water. I saw sharks when I was reading this book, which is called I Survived: True Stories, Nature Attacks. And I read today about a shark attack in 1916. Would you guys like to hear about it? It's pretty cool. It's called Summer of Terror: The True Story of the Shark Attacks of 1916. And look, there's the shark. It's got really sharp teeth. Ooh. It was July 12th, 1916, and 12-year-old Joseph Dunn was sprinting towards Matawan Creek. Behind him were his 14-year-old brother Michael and their buddy Jerry Houlihan. It was a wild race to get into the water, and Joe was determined to win. They reached the dock, and Joe leaped off. Splash! Joe hit the cool water, sinking down, down, down. He let his toes touch the mucky bottom before blasting himself back up with a splash. What could be better than this? Joe and Michael lived in New York City, but they came out to Cliffwood, New Jersey as often as they could. Their aunt lived there, and lucky for Joe and Michael, she was always happy to have them. The tiny town of Cliffwood was not a fancy place, not like those towns on the South New Jersey shore where rich people went for the summer. There were no hotels, no white sand beaches with pounding waves. Matawan Creek was a muddy waterway whose banks were lined with brick and tile factories. Here it shows a picture of a hot summer day in 1916 in New York City. And kids, look at, they're splashing in the fountain to stay cool. A fountain's not the same as a beach, though. But Joe and Michael, Cliffwood was a paradise, a happy escape from the misery of summer in New York City. It was blazing hot up and down the East Coast. Nobody could remember such brutal heat so early in the summer. The heat wave brought particular suffering to city dwellers, and not just the humans. In New York City and Philadelphia, horses fainted in the streets. Dogs yelped in pain as they walked along the stove-hot sidewalks. Ouch. Even the cockroaches in Dunn's roasting apartment seemed to drag in the stifling air. Out in Cliffwood, Joe and Michael could forget all about that. They could play pickup baseball games with Jerry and other local kids. They could buy nickel ice cream cones on Main Street, and best of all, they could always cool off in the creek. Joe was looking forward to an afternoon of swimming and racing with the guys, but their carefree mood was interrupted by the sound of a voice shouting at them to get out of the water. A man appeared on the dock, sweat-soaked and out of breath. The look on his face sent chills down Joe's spine. He looked terrified. And what he said next nearly stopped Joe's heart. There's a shark in the creek! A shark in the creek? Before Joe could even get his mind around such a horrifying idea, he was swimming frantically towards the shore. He made it to the dock, where Michael and Jerry were already out of the water. Michael reached out to help Joe climb up, but before Joe could lift his legs onto the ladder, a dark shape suddenly appeared in the water next to him. Seconds later, Joe felt something grab a hold of his leg like a giant pair of scissors. Ooh. He felt a crunch. The water around him suddenly turned bright red. Joe opened his mouth, but was too terrified to even scream. Time seemed to slow, and everything around him went dim. Joseph Dunn was about to become a victim of one of the most notorious series of shark attacks in history, the shark attacks of 1916. By the time the terror was over, 3 men and 1 boy would be dead. Wow, and they show the picture here of the white shark with his powerful jaws. Man. But Joseph didn't know what was happening to him. There was only one thought in his mind, that he was about to die. Next section is called A Mood of Fear. In the months leading up to the blazing summer of 1916, a mood of dread had gripped America. People were deeply troubled by the news of war, which this later became known as World War I. That's been raging in Europe for 2 years. It was a brutal war, pitting England and France and other allied countries against the ruthless forces of Germany and its allies. Joseph would watch his parents' worried faces as they studied the newspaper each morning, their toast and coffee growing cold as they read about the latest battles. There were horrifying descriptions of the fighting. The battlefield soaked in blood, with thousands of soldiers dying each day. With each passing week, it was becoming clear that American forces would have to join to fight to defeat the enemy. Soon millions of U.S. soldiers, many still in their teens, would be crossing the ocean and charging into the deadly battles. What nobody knew yet, that another threat was lurking that summer, one far closer to home, in the waters along the New Jersey coast. Here's the soldiers in the pits during World War I. Next section, the lookout. The terror had begun 11 days before the attack on Joseph Dunn on a New Jersey beach, 75 miles south of Cliffwood. Charles Besant, a 25-year-old from Philadelphia, was visiting a resort town of Beach Haven. He and his parents and sisters were staying at one of the elegant hotels that lined the beach, and Charles was heading into the ocean for his before-supper swim. A strong athlete, Besant loved swimming laps in the ocean, and today he made a new friend, a large golden retriever that he had been playing with on the beach. The two set out together in the water, 2 lone brown heads bobbing up above the surface. There were dozens of people on the beach, enjoying the late afternoon breezes before they headed to the hotel dining room for a fine supper. Besant and the dogs swam out about 50 yards, and then, strangely, the dog turned and paddled quickly back to shore. Besant called to the dog, but the retriever was already back on the beach, shaking the salty water from his fur. Here's the fancy hotel, and then here's the beach. Suddenly, shouts echoed from the beach. Look out! A few people standing at the shoreline could see what Vasant could not. A large fin knifing through the water. Can you guys make a shark fin? Vasant must have glimpsed the creature seconds before it attacked. It was a massive shark, 8 to 9 feet long. Its jaws wide open to reveal rows and rows of 2-inch long razor sharp teeth. The massive jaws slammed shut around Vasant's left thigh, the teeth tearing through his skin, his muscle, and into his bone. Vasant's screams rose above the pounding surf, above the chattering couples and laughing children, above the clinking of silverware and glasses drifting out from the hotel's dining room. Many people first assumed that Vasant was shouting for the dog to come back into the water. But Alexander Ott knew something was terribly wrong. He was a surfman, a lifeguard patrolling the beach. Ott sprinted into the water, and in less than a minute, he had reached the young man. Vasant was desperately trying to stay afloat in the water, stained bright red from his own blood. Fighting his rising terror, Ott took hold of Vant's arms. But the shark struck again, once again locking jaws around Vasant's thigh. This time, the shark did not let go. 5 other men rushed in to help. Mustering all their strength, they hauled the bleeding young man and the shark attached to his leg into shallower water. The shark's belly was dragging against the sandy bottom when it finally unlocked its jaw and swam away. The men managed to get Vasant to the beach. He was carried into the hotel lobby and gently laid out on a desk where the doctor tried to desperately stop his bleeding. His parents and sisters were with him when he died, an hour later. The dozens of people who witnessed the attack on Charles Vasant had no doubt about what had happened. He had been bitten by a shark. Many had seen the beast with their own eyes. At large dorsal fin poking through the water and pointed nose. Alexander Ott had been just feet away from the gigantic fish, close enough to look into its deathly black eyes. It was beyond question a large shark, but as the story spread, few people believed it. Yes, Charles Vasant had been attacked by a large sea creature, but a shark? To most people, that seemed impossible. Most believe it was a swordfish, whose blade-like nose could easily slice through human flesh. Other possibility was a snapping turtle, a giant reptile armed with jaws powerful enough to snap a human bone in half. Only a few newspapers reported the incident, and some stories didn't even mention the word shark. Dies after attacked by fish was the headline of a short article that appeared in New York Times on July 3rd. Why do people have such doubts? Mysterious oceans. For most Americans in 1916, the oceans covering 3/4 of Earth were as mysterious as distant galaxies. The study of oceans, known as marine biology, was a brand new science. The ocean's depths were unexplored, the world where mermaids very well might be living in sunken cities, where tentacled monsters could be guarding treasure chests, overflowing with jewels. And here you'll see, look how big this suit is. This goes all the way into the deep ocean. I could not imagine wearing that thing. Wow. Almost nothing was known about large sharks or any type of sea creatures that weren't routinely captured by fishermen or easily observed close to shore. But there was one fact about sharks that most everyone was certain of. No shark would ever bite a live human being. Even the most respected scientists mistakenly believed that sharks were shy creatures with weak jaws and small appetites. Never had there been a proven case of a live person being bitten by a shark. To people living in 1916, the idea that a shark had killed Charles Besant was a far-fetched idea, such as like a deer attacking a man while he was strolling through the woods. Somehow, news of Besant's death didn't spread far, and those who'd heard rumors figured it was a freak accident. Americans had enough to worry about with the war in Europe. A man being killed by a fish wasn't big news until 5 days later when it happened again. Man killed by shark. It's unknown whether 27-year-old Charles Bruder had heard about the tragic death of Charles Besant, but even if he had, it is unlikely that the story would have stopped him from enjoying his daily swims along the beach in Spring Lake, an elegant vacation town about 45 miles north of Beach Haven. Bruder worked at the Grand Essex in Sussex Hotel, where his cheerful smile and high spirits made him popular among the wealthy guests and his fellow workers. When Bruder wasn't hauling trunks and suitcases and helping guests get settled into their rooms, he loved to swim in the ocean until his muscles ached. And that's just what he was doing in the early afternoon of July 6th. He was about 120 yards from the shore, his muscular arms churning through the water with graceful strokes. Suddenly, without warning, he was savagely attacked by a large shark. More than 500 people were on the beach at the time. Most heard Bruder's screams. One woman glimpsed something red bobbing up and down in the water, and she was convinced that a red canoe had overturned. She alerted the surfmen, who quickly mobilized for rescue. But of course there was no canoe, just a badly injured Bruder struggling to stay afloat in the water, filled with his own blood. He was near death when the surfmen brought him onto the beach. His injuries were so horrific that men standing on the beach vomited in the sand. Yuck. Dozens of ladies fainted. Telephone operators were ordered to send warnings to nearby hotels. Within the hour, every beach up and down the shore was closed. After Bruder died, a respected doctor carefully studied the jagged wounds on his leg and torso. The doctor also was an experienced fisherman. He was certain there was only one marine creature capable of causing such injuries, a large shark. This time, there were very few doubts. By the next morning, headlines blared from the front pages of the newspaper around the world. Monster shark kills again. Overnight, the image of the shark was transformed. The tame creature of the sea were suddenly seen as a bloodthirsty monster with a taste for human flesh. As scientists would eventually realize, though this image of sharks was also incorrect. Large predatory sharks can and do eat just about anything. But today's shark experts agree that even famous man-eating species like the great white or the tiger shark do not deliberately seek out humans as prey. Perhaps the shark that killed Besant and Bruder was injured or weakened and unable to hunt for its usual prey, such as seals or sea lions. We can never know what caused this shark to attack humans, but the ferocious man-eater of New Jersey would soon kill again. Make sure to view next week, and we're going to continue learning about shark attacks of 1916. I hope you enjoyed the first part of the story, which can be kind of scary, but thank goodness there's definitely no sharks near us. Thank you guys.